Hello, everyone's Price Focus on a Monday morning when Nottingham Forest fans can reflect on another of those great City ground wins. Did Saturday's 1-0 victory over Manchester City put one foot in the Champions League? Was it the perfect Nuno performance? And was it the loudest goal celebration yet? Joining me to discuss all that and more, first of all, is Michael Temple. Temps, morning, how are you doing?
Feeling good, mate. How are you?
I'm good. I'll tell you this. I thought I was having some kind of medical incident because I haven't taken my blood pressure pills for 2 days. They ran out. But I think I just made a curry that was too hot and was making me sweat a bit this morning. But I think I'm all right. Is the answer to that question?
Well, if you fall off your chair, we've got a true professional today. So if you are gonna have some kind of blood pressure related incident, I think today's the day.
True. If we need a backup host, I think we've got a good man in place. Darren Fletcher, TNT Sports commentator, Reds fan, busiest man in football. How are you this morning?
I'm all right. I'm just trying to work out whether Temps has got me hosting the podcast or fixing your health. As a doctor, I can't help. I was a little bit confused there by what he meant. But no.
If you can fix my health.
No chance. No chance.
Never mind. Right. I'm looking forward to this incredible day on Saturday. I normally start with one of the fans to give us general thoughts, but I'll start with Fletcher this one. You were there, you got to commentate on it, which I'm sure is little Darren Fletcher's dream when you were growing up, no doubt. Just talk us through what you made of it, just in general, and then we'll branch off from there.
The memories of little Darren Fletcher aren't good. I always think I'm the luckiest fella to do the job that I do, and I've been even luckier from a Forest perspective that the fixtures have fallen really well for me. So I was able to commentate the day that Taiwo won the game against Liverpool, the first season back, which was astonishing. And I've had other great experiences, the Brighton 7-0. I thought Saturday felt a lot like West Ham, first home game after promotion in terms of the noise. And the fact the sun was shining on the City ground made it look redder than normal. Everybody had got a shirt on. And the whole place just looked like a big red bowl of cherries, apart from the sky blue end. And it was a wonderful day. When I walked in the stadium in the morning, there was a feeling. And I said before the game kicked off, and Ali McCoy, who was with me, we both agreed. We didn't think there was any way that Forest would lose. It was just whether they could find a way to win. And I think when you walked in, the more people that arrived in the ground that morning, as the stadium started to fill, that belief became even stronger because there was such a feeling in there. And my view was that was a game that Forest had to have. There was a reality that existed that had they lost the game against Manchester City, they could have been fifth at the end of the weekend. Now, I think that's a blow because you've had the cushion, been third, got the gap, bit of comfort for such a long period of time. If you get to the last 10 games of the season and all of a sudden you get dragged back in, that's a big psychological test for any team. So the fact that they won the match and they've actually kept the gap at what it is, I think was huge for them. But I think regardless of what happens, we're starting to compile a top 10 list of great City ground days, aren't we? And that's in recent times. And that's right up there with any of them, I think, on Saturday.
A couple of things to pick up on what Fletcher said there, obviously, Temps. One of them where both he and Ali McCoy's thinking that Forest were definitely going to get something, which is pretty mad from where we come from, especially against Man City, last season and even earlier this season. Interestingly, I was flicking through my phone beforehand, and it was a video from pre-match from the NBC coverage in the States, and they were discussing pressure and whether Forest could hack it and would they fall away. Do you think Saturday goes quite a long way to answering that actually we can hack it and we are withstanding any pressure that's on us?
Definitely. That old Forest mindset of, oh, this is great, what's about to go wrong, just doesn't exist anymore. This generation of players, this group haven't been burdened by the years in the Championship, the years in the wilderness. All they've seen in recent times is success, and their target's been different in previous seasons when it's been all about survival, and they've managed to achieve that against the odds. So I detect a massive shift in mindset amongst the players. I think they've got belief, having been through what they've been through this season, that they are there on merit. This isn't a fortunate run. And I can understand why someone like Ali, who watches so much football, sees league table for what it is. He hasn't fallen in the trap of people like Fletcher's mate Michael Owen, who have convinced themselves that Forest will drop off at some point. I think anyone that's watched Forest as much as we have has seen that this is deserved. It is structured. It's not a flash in the pan. And there are so many players in this 11 that if they're not playing in the Champions League with Forest next year, they'll be on the shopping list of teams with Champions League fixtures. That confidence then translates into the team selection. We're not playing 5 at the back and trying to hold Man City to a draw at home. We're picking Anthony Elanga and Callum Hudson-Odoi and going on the front foot. So a complete shift in mindset, a different level of belief, and a different gear for our football club.
Can I just tackle 2 of the points you've just raised there? First and foremost, this ridiculously cheap and unthought out narrative that Forest are going to drop away and might not have the balls for it. There's way more pressure on Manchester City to get in the Champions League than Forest. There's way more pressure on Chelsea, $1 billion in, to get in the Champions League than Forest. Teams like Forest and Brighton and Newcastle, they're playing with house money at this stage because they've won regardless. Forest are going to play European football next season, which was a pipe dream at the start of the year. So I would be pretty sure that Nuno and the leaders in the changing room are saying, look, let's enjoy it. Let's just carry on doing what we're doing. We're fine. I don't think there's any pressure. You can tell when a team feels pressure because they play with restriction. And Forest don't play with restriction at all. They play with a tremendous amount of freedom. And they've all got smiles on their faces. Now, if people can't look at that and see it for what it is, if they've got to stick to this cheap, incorrect narrative that somehow this bubble is going to burst in the last 10 matches, then probably shouldn't be doing the job that they're doing in the way that they're doing it, because it's just not right. It's not built on anything. It's not based on anything. So it's just a wild stab in the dark, and then you've got the chance to say you were right if that's what happens. But it's not going to happen. So I think we can kind of dismiss that. In regards to why we felt that this was going to be a day where Forest wouldn't lose, if you look at the City team, they're in the middle of this rebuild now, which I think is a bigger rebuild than we thought it might be when it first started. And the one thing that City don't have is dynamism. They're not a very dynamic team. They're not very athletic. They've not got runners. They've not got a lot of speed. And I think when you're a Forest team that's set up the way that they do, if you've got a side that's relatively pedestrian, that wants 1,000 passes before they do anything, Nuno's team becomes a very difficult team to break down because tactically they're all so switched on. The defensive spacings are so good. The work ethic from the top of the pitch to the defenders is so good, and they're all in it together. So you give that team time to get its shape, and it's very difficult to break it down. And Nuno said post-match, the clean sheet is always the prerogative. And you could see that because to a man, they were all committed to getting that. Yes, City are going to get a couple of chances because they've got world-class players, but they're not the kind of team. See, when you see Forest play Newcastle can be quite dynamic. Murphy, Gordon, Isak, they've got runners in midfield like Joe Linton. So we find that team difficult to play against because they can do things that put us out of our comfort zone. But if you allow Forest to contain a team like Manchester City do and did, that was why we were confident they wouldn't lose. The challenge was going to be to get one at the other end, which Edison gave a big helping hand in that regard, because let's be honest, he should have saved it, but we'll take it. But I just felt that Forest were possibly Manchester City's worst nightmare as a defensive setup on Saturday, and that proved to be the case.
Do you think, Temps, the goal sums up the freedom that Fletcher referenced? Because Gibbs White, his instinct is to take that on, and Hudson-Odoi is really, really positive. I've gone on about Doku a lot, but take a fullback on and do something. Don't take a fullback on, check back, and slow everything down. That I thought that summed up us a lot. That goal.
Yeah, the goal summed up the season, really, didn't it? We counter-attacked. They've just dawdled. And the hallmark of a Pep Guardiola side, irrespective of its Man City in transition or the great Bayern and Barca sides, they work hard out of possession. He had that 7-second rule to try and reclaim the ball. You watch the moment Morgan Gibbs-White comes into possession on the half-turn with that pass from Olaina. There's not a Man City player moving. They're completely pedestrian. They haven't bought into whatever Pep's trying to create now. And he has the vision to ping one off to Callum Hudson-Odoi. So, yes, I do. We've got a very clear method of playing. It's not always as pretty and as considered as the traditional Forest passing game of the past, but it's so effective. And just getting Callum Hudson-Odoi on an island with his fullback, and he's just so positive, isn't he? I think there's an argument that says at this moment in time, Callum Hudson-Odoi is more important to this side than Morgan Gibbs-White. Morgan's been the creative access for a long time. Callum Hudson-Odoi is so efficient, looks to be positive. If he can't be, recycles the ball, finds a way. He's having an excellent season, and his impact on this game in Liverpool will never be forgotten.
I think it was fascinating too tactically. And I think Nuno beat Pep in this regard. And it's 1-1 because I thought Pep tactically beat Nuno in the game at the Etihad, because Forest was set up for Guardiola to go and play as an inverted fullback, and he played the entire game wide, and Forest never really got to grips with it, and he was the main provider. This time I thought Nuno was the one that won it, because he was very good at, and they talked about it on Match of the Day. Ali referenced it during the commentary very early, that they were filling the spaces, those little inverted spaces between fullback and centre half. So they'd sit Gibbs White in one of the holes. They might sit Elliot Anderson in another one of the holes. And it made Manchester City go wide and go outside Forest. And then you're hoping that Nico Williams and Olaina have top games, and they did. And they were very good. Dominguez doubled up in the first half with Aina on Doku. And then on the other side, they didn't play down that side as much with Savinho. He seemed to be a little bit deeper. But then when they switched Doku over in the second half, they doubled him again. I just thought tactically, Nuno got it absolutely right. And any situation that arose during the 90 minutes, they'd already prepared the answer and they were ready. It felt like in chess terms that he was always one step ahead of his opponent on the day. And I think that's... and by the way, we said on Saturday, he had a good record with Wolves against Manchester City when City were better than this. I think he did the double one year. They won at the Etihad and they won at Molineux. So I don't think he's got any kind of inferiority complex over Pep Guardiola either. So I think he just kind of looks at it and breaks it down. And by the way, isn't it wonderful? So Monday night is giving Olaina a piggyback around the ground. Saturday is dancing the two-step in the changing room after. I mean, the bond between manager and players, I wouldn't say it's unique, but it's rare in the modern game. It's not quite that insular now, other clubs. I mean, I can't imagine Pep dancing the two-step anytime soon. And he's certainly not giving his fullback a piggyback around the pitch. But that's really special, that element, because they obviously think the world of him. And by thinking the world of him and having that respect for him, they will go out there and do anything he asks them to do with the utmost belief that what he's telling them is right. And I think that is essential to what they're trying to do at the moment.
Thank you very much to David Kirk for signing up for membership. Very much appreciate that. I want to explore the tactical thing shortly, the other side of the first ad break, but just before we do, this is a commentary question. I don't think this is too inside baseball. I think people find this interesting. When you're commentating, Fletch, I know that you and some other commentators, when a goal goes in, I don't know if you do this all the time, you don't say anything. Is that a deliberate thing because there's nothing better than the noise of the crowd, which was so loud?
Nothing better than the noise of the crowd. It's happened to me twice in the last few weeks. The Merseyside derby at Goodison when Tarkowski scores the volley, and on Saturday at the City Ground. There's nothing more special than hearing the crowd. And I got a bit of stick on Saturday from my colleagues because I also don't speak for the entirety of Mull of Kintyre. Because I think if you get the opportunity to listen to that, then if you're at home, that's your experience in the day. What's the point of me talking over that? I can't make that sound any better. Now, there are certain things that happen at football stadiums that you think you've just got to let people at home experience it and listen to it. And Ali said to me, just let me ask you a question. He said, why is it that you don't speak for a minute prior to the game here, but you don't do that anywhere else? I said, listen, don't start that. I said, there's no need for that. But I just wanted everybody to hear Mull of Kintyre on Saturday in its entirety, in the sunshine, because it was being sung so loudly and with so much passion. So yeah, let it breathe. Let the people watching hear the emotion, and then they just might hopefully feel like they're there. And I agree with whoever made the point. It did feel noisier when that goal went in on Saturday. I mean, the place went absolutely. I want to know who the bloke was who Callum grabs in the. He's had the time of his life. The fellow that was celebrating with the boys. I'd love to know who he was because he's going to dine out on that for a long time. That was fantastic.
Massively.
Brilliant.
No, I agree. I've watched that goal back more than any. I said to you on WhatsApp, I watched it back in my car about 6 or 7 times. I've closed my eyes and listened to it. I think it's one of the peak moments of being a fan. I'm very thankful for being there. Right, just before we talk tactics, then a word for the Trent Navigation or a video from the Trent Navigation. We shall see you in 52 seconds.
Hey up me duckies, a quick rundown of match days at the Big Shed. We're open from 10 serving full English breakfast, teas, coffees and believe it or not, beers. Father's Footy Quiz is followed by the lunchtime kickoffs, and the outdoor kitchen is fired up from midday, serving sourdough pizzas, burgers, hot dogs, pies and sausage rolls. Lovely. Pints start at £4. We have a great selection of cask ales and lagers to lubricate the vocal cords for a bit of a sing-song before the game. After the match, we've got some great DJs and live bands booked. So get your send down to the Trent Nav. Win or lose, we're having a booze. And if we draw, we'll have some more.
I've not seen that before. That's brilliant.
It is good, isn't it? It's a good one. It's a good one.
Yes, that is our city. I love that. Brilliant.
That's the best advert I've ever seen. The Dave Willens diet, he looks good on it.
I love it. Absolutely love that.
Thanks very much to Nav for their backing as ever. Picking up on tactics then a little bit. As Fletch said there, Temps, Morgan played a deeper role. We played 4-3-3. I think there was a bit of 4-4-2. There was a bit of 4-2-4 in there. It was brilliant. It was brilliant to watch. Just on principle in general, though, do you want us to persist with Morgan playing a bit deeper, and because it gets a lot more out of Dominguez, or do you think it's a one-off thing, Temps?
Well, before this game, I thought Dominguez was the player whose place in the side was most at risk. I expected an unchanged side apart from that, but he's tweaked it and got the best out of him. I thought Dominguez was excellent until he was taken off at the weekend. You need to find a way to get Morgan Gibbs-White into the game. There have been times in recent weeks where his impact on the game hasn't been quite as telling because he simply hasn't had the ball in the right area. The goal's a case in point that he can do damage from the middle third because he's got a range of passing that we rarely see, because for so long he's been in that 10 spot, been trying to get him on the ball between the lines, and then he brings players into play with that interplay in and around the box. So tactically on Saturday it was spot on. I don't think we'll necessarily persist with that. I think he'll revert to a more familiar 10 spot and we'll revert to more familiar wingers rather than this dynamism that you described now, because you can't pigeonhole what Forest's formation is. Anthony Langer often becomes a second striker. We've seen Callum Hudson-Odoi swap wings. We often play asymmetric and have that big overlap down the right-hand side. So I do not expect to see Morgan Gibbs-White holding in that manner, but it did get a lot out of Nico Dominguez. It did allow him to press the fullbacks. It does allow him to break rank and become the leader of the press. So yeah, it works on Saturday, but I expect to see him revert to a more familiar position from this point.
I think that one of the most refreshing aspects of Nuno's management is in an era where you employ a manager and he plays a system come hell or high water. And I'm talking about Ruben Amorim for a start. He's not got the players, but he's playing it anyway. Postecoglou's doing it anyway. This fella at the City ground has a look at what's necessary for that week. Works all week on the training pitch to make sure everybody knows what they're doing. And then he goes out and that's what he does. He's not tied to a system. He knows he's got players that can play in different ways. And he's very practical. And I think if the situation arises again where he thinks he needs Morgan Gibbs-White in a deeper role, he'll do it. And he'll do it without giving it a second thought, because he knows he's got players that are intellectually bright enough to be able to play in a variety of different ways. And I think it's the reason why other teams find Forest difficult to play against, because you don't really know what they're going to do, but you've almost got it in your back of your mind that whatever you do, you know that he'll have an answer of some description. So I think he'll continue to shake it up tactically. And I think they've got this ability as well to change things tactically in game, which is not always straightforward, particularly against a team like City, where even though they're not vintage City, if you've got one cog out of place in your wheel, they'll find that weakness and they'll exploit it. So I think the ability to be able to transition to different ways of playing in the course of 90 minutes against the very best teams is vital. And I think kind of throwing it forward in European matches next season, that's going to be key too, because we're going to encounter all different ways of playing games. And we've got a team that's been so adaptable, so flexible during the course of this season that will be a real strength for them when the type of match changes for them. So I think everything in that regard is really positive. I think we can go tactics till we're blue in the face. That's as good a display as I've seen from a back four both individually and collectively, for a long time. I thought it was the best I'd ever seen Nico Williams play in a Forest shirt. I think that was probably Ola Aina's best game of what's been a brilliant season. And the two in the middle are just like magnets. So I thought that four were impeccable. I can't think of a mistake that they made for 90 minutes against a team that moves you so much, and you need so much concentration because of the amount of different things they throw at you, that nobody mentally switched off, nobody physically switched off. And I thought the whole bedrock of everything, yeah, it was great in front, but those four, I thought, were as good as you can see a back four play, both in individual circumstances and as a collective unit. They were fantastic.
Just on Gibbs White, I did look up his stats. I think I said I would do it yesterday. 4 goals, 6 assists in last 13 matches. Only 1 goal, no assists in the first 14. So for whatever reason, we've seen a transition, a transformation.
Is there also a statistic, Matt, for how often he gets the ball back and the amount of ground he covers and all that kind of thing? Because there is no other player that plays like him in the Premier League with the work ethic out of possession. And I think we can often get bogged down with creative players like him, and we look at goals and assists. And I'm as guilty as anybody, because I said at the start of this season, I think, I'd like to see more goals from him. But his overall work for the team when we haven't got the ball is infectious. He works as hard as anybody in the group. And I think when we look at his numbers, we should also look at those statistics too, because when we haven't got the ball, he's a vital part of what they do to stay solid and get it back again. So I think that's got to be added to Gibbs White whenever we look at his analysis with numbers like that.
And as an extension of that as well, Fletch, if you're looking, I know we always hark back to the England squad, but in terms of I don't think you could ask Phil Foden probably not to play that role. I don't think you could ask James Maddison to play that role. Probably only Jude Bellingham, I think, is so versatile and so good. And that says a lot in as well, doesn't it, I think?
Yeah, it does. And I'd be very, very surprised if he's not in Thomas Tuchel's first squad. Very surprised. I think Elliot Anderson's got a real chance to be in it. And I think if he can't be that far away, can he, Callum Hudson-Odoi, based on the fact he's still only 24, last played for England in 2019. But here he is now playing as well as he's ever played, I think, in the Premier League. And there is an issue on England's left side, if you think about it. Who, apart from Anthony Gordon, who is there out there that's a natural left-sided England attacker? We play a lot of square pegs in round holes on the left. We're okay on the right. We've got a million of them, but we're struggling for a left-side attacker. And having been in a conversation with Thomas Tuchel a few weeks ago in Paris, that's one of the areas that he's looking to work out what he does, because there isn't a natural, automatic player to play on the left for England that gives them the kind of balance and attacking threat that he wants. So I think if Callum continues to do what he's doing out there on that side, because he can play out there. So why wouldn't you look at it? Why wouldn't you? He's great in the squad as well, because he can play either side. You know, a lot of them can play one side, he can play either side. Scored from the right on Saturday. You know, plays on the left and cuts in and hits it with his right foot. So on the other side. So I don't think he'll be a million miles away from the England manager's thoughts. He might just need a few more performances like we saw at the weekend. But I think he has to be in contention as well. Genuinely.
Yeah. Gibbs White, Anderson and Hudson-Odoi are all great tournament footballers because they're so versatile. Just saying. So there you go. On Hudson-Odoi, Temps, I don't know if we've got an option on his contracts, but he signed a 3-year contract initially. This is season 2. We're heading into season 3. Any worries on that front? You know, 1 year left, clubs come sniffing?
No, because his ambition was to get back to where he was. As Fletcher said, he was an established is the wrong word. He was a Champions League player and an England international as a teenager. And that's because of his quality. It's fitness issues that have seen him spat out of Chelsea, not ability, not form necessarily. Okay, he struggled for rhythm because he's had recurring problems with the Achilles and the like. But now we're seeing what happens when he puts a run of games together. So I think it's just a great example, in trading, of allowing Brennan Johnson to go for the right money, replacing him ostensibly with a player who's slightly different in profile, but has had as big, if not a bigger impact on the team, banking a pile of cash and now having a player who's worth so much more, yes, in the transfer market, but more importantly to us. Callum Hudson-Odoi remains the bargain signing of the Premier League in the last couple of years. Was it £5 million from Chelsea? And now he's a consistent force and on the fringes of Thomas Tuchel's thoughts for England selection. I think it's brilliant business. I'm so pleased he stayed fit and his influence is there for all to see. I was just going to bring up a point on the tactics. So Opta did a bit of analysis before the game and framed this as the most fast and direct team playing against the most slow and intricate team in the Premier League. Man City have more passes per sequence and move up the pitch much slower than anybody else. Forest have the least passes per sequence and move up the pitch much faster than anybody else. Man City are used to playing against teams that are deep and compact. They've been dominant for such a long period of time. They've got the players that kind of look to break that down. And they normally have those two banks of four, and they just find themselves passing around the arc, trying to change the point of attack, find the way in. What Forest did, which was really, really intelligent, was drop Elanga and Chris Wood back from their centre forward wing positions to disrupt that passing arc before they even got to the edge of the box. And I think it frustrated Man City. And it speaks to Fletcher's point about Pep not having plan B, not being able to make dynamic calls, because the lads that have been his sergeant majors for so long, De Bruyne, one or two others, just are nowhere near the level they were at. There's still far much more improvement to come from within this Forest team. I think the current Man City side need to be eased out, refreshed, and it's probably a year or two before they're back to full force. So, a real opportune moment in time for us to take advantage of the failure of Man United, the failure of Tottenham. Chelsea could come good. I think they've got a profile of player that they're just backing the signings that they've made, and that there'll be more improvement from in the next 2 or 3 years. Arsenal, Liverpool, arguably out there on their own. This is such a golden opportunity, and I think we're gonna take it.
The thing is, when you look at it now, Forest on 51, and then you get Brighton on 46, so 5 points. So all of a sudden, Brighton have got to win 2 more than Forest. So, and they've got to play teams around them as well. If you look at their fixtures, they've got 1 or 2 games against teams around them. Forest home games alone, all of them, you'd make them, I think, pretty strong favourites to win every home game they've got left. You know, you'd also make them strong favourites to win at Ipswich as well. When you've got 10 games left, if you win 6 and you're saying to somebody else you've got to win 8, Liverpool probably aren't going to win 8, and they're the best team in the league by a distance, apart from that day at Anfield, of course. But if you think about it, mathematically, it's starting to come Forest's way now. They put themselves in a position now where they've not got to worry about anyone else. They've only got to worry about themselves because they're so close to the finish, just based on the mathematics. They know that if they win 5 or 6 games, if they can just do their business at home even, then that'll be enough now to get them in the Champions League. And that must be such a good feeling. And when we talk about pressure, that again is a reason why it starts to eliminate pressure, because you're not relying on anybody else. Everything's in your own hands. And they'll be looking at those games and thinking, right, because the City ground's going to bounce again when Man United turn up. Hey, I tell you what, did anybody think this? I wonder what Marmoush felt on Saturday. Because he could have been a Forest player, and he said, I don't want to go there. All right, fine. Well, you've rocked up. You've heard that noise. You've seen that team. You've felt that City. And then you've got back on the bus with that lot who's just got beat, who might not be in the Champions League next season, right? I wonder what he felt. I had a little snigger to myself when he came on. I thought sometimes you don't always make the right decision, sunshine.
You'd have had a great view of that classic photo of Yatesy just waiting to enter the fray alongside Mamouche and De Bruyne.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I've got it here. For people who haven't seen it, who are listening, there's a great photo of Yates. And there's so much in this photo encapsulates everything. Yates' body language, Forest on the counter-attack, breaking forwards. City's completely broken midfield. They've got so many men in advance of the ball. And then you've got De Bruyne and Marmouche on the touchline. Everything's great about it. So I was gonna reference that one.
And what about that moment when he came on and he won the ball over towards the Brian Clough stand, just inside Forest half, and he got 2 or 3 round him, and he just wanted it more, didn't he? And that's a young lad from Lincoln through the academy. He's been here, there, and everywhere, from Barrow to Scunthorpe to Notts County, you name it. He's been there, and then he comes on, and the crowd. That was almost as big a cheer as when Callum Hudson-Odoi scored the goal, wasn't it? It was brilliant. I saw Greg posted this morning. Has anybody got that clip of Yatesy winning the ball back? Because I really want to see it again. And I thought that was a great moment. And I saw him after the game. He came walking through the corridor, and his smile was as wide as Trent Bridge. And I just thought, what a journey you've had. And here you are. And you would literally cut off one of your limbs if it meant that Forest would get into the Champions League. And I just think it's great for people like him.
Let's expand on that Champions League point a little bit more then. I did some research a little bit from what Fletcher was saying, just around what Opta are saying, running their simulations as they do on chances of making the Champions League. Liverpool 100%. They have Arsenal 99.9%. And then Forest 72.3. So three times out of four we're making Champions League. Chelsea 61. Man City still 88, and then there's a big drop off. Brighton 17, Villa 7, Bournemouth 14, Newcastle before they play tonight 37.3, and I really fancy West Ham to get something against Newcastle tonight with their injuries. So and the other point around what Fletcher made, there's a lot of games between teams who are still in the race. There's 22 games, and only 2 of those involve Forest. So I've included Fulham in this because they've got an outside chance. And they've got a lot of big fixtures to come. So games between clubs chasing Champions League places. City have got 4, Chelsea have got 5, Newcastle have got 4, Brighton have got 4, Bournemouth 4, Villa 6, Fulham 6, and Forest 2. I mean, it feels pretty good, Temps. The odds. I believe in this stuff. I believe in fixtures and everything. So I'm very, very confident. What about you?
Well, odds on, and just to Fletcher's point, Brighton's odds are 17.5%, so less than 1 in 5. The pressure's on everybody else. The phrase in cricket is scoreboard pressure. Our points are on the board. Other people have got to chase them and earn them. So I think that's an accurate stat, and I genuinely believe we'll be top 5. Don't care where in the Champions League by any means. The team have earned the right, deserved the right to play in that competition, and there's just not a shred of evidence, no grounds for any assumption that we're going to drop off. We've got the most favourable run-in of anybody in the top 5. There's so many points to be robbed from each other because of the frequency of fixtures between Champions League chasers, as you've described. So, yeah, I think it's fair. I genuinely believe we're going to be a Champions League team next season. Yeah,
we saw it this weekend, didn't we? I mean, Bournemouth are all of a sudden 7 behind Forest, having blown a 2-0 lead at Tottenham, where I thought Ange had a bet on Bournemouth to get in the Champions League the way they were playing Spurs. But they blew the 2-0 lead. Fulham have dropped down to 10th on 42. They're 9 behind Forest because they've dropped 22 points from winning positions, I noticed this weekend. Leading at Brighton, lost 2-1. So there you've seen 2 teams straight away take a backward step. Aston Villa in a little bit of a false position in 7th because they played a game more. So they're 6 behind Forest, but Forest have got a game in hand and we play them. So Villa's journey is more difficult because Fulham, Newcastle and Bournemouth would all go above them if they won the apparent game in hand. So Aston Villa is still on the outside looking in. And it must be, you mentioned the word scoreboard pressure. The players must look at these fixtures in the chain and know what's coming and think, oh, we've got to win that one. Can't lose to them. That's a 6-pointer. So you're kind of going into these games under pressure where having points on the board at this stage, as you quite rightly say, Temps, is massive. And you mentioned the point, Matt, we've only got 2. I mean, one's on the final day of the season. So Forest theoretically could be in by then. There might only be one against a team in that top 10 that Forest have got to worry about, which is Aston Villa away. And they're very hit and miss at the minute based on trying to combine. And they're going to still be in the Champions League because they'll go through next week. So they've still got to concentrate on that and the FA Cup. So they've got a lot of games coming their way. So Forest might not get to Chelsea. It might be done and dusted by the time they get to Chelsea. And I think we're basically saying, it's like somebody said yesterday about the title race. For Arsenal to win the title from this point, Liverpool have got to lose half their games. Well, they've not lost half the games so far. So why are they going to do it? Why do we think we're going to get to this stage of the season and everybody's going to start losing? They're not. They're going to carry on doing what they're doing. So Forest have got to lose a significant number of the games they've got left to let teams go past them. And I think we saw yesterday that that's highly unlikely because they're a very fit, motivated group of players. So I'm equally as confident as you, Temps, that they're going to be playing Champions League football next season. My only advice would be to TNT Sports, don't let me anywhere near it because I've got the potential to be fired during the game due to being that excited about being there on the night.
I think you contractually obliged, Fletch. I think, took me in your suitcase to Madrid.
That could be the first time, I swear. If Forest go 1-0 up against Real Madrid, I think people should allow me to swear at that point just once in my career.
I'll just play devil's advocate a little bit, Thames, just to see.
Oh, come on, Matthew. Let's enjoy our moment.
Well, I've been supremely confident since I don't know when, a long time ago, that we'll do it because the way we play, I don't see us falling apart. But I'll make a case. We've not been great away from home lately. We've got a group of players who not too many have been in this position before, and there could be the mentality that this is our one big chance to get in the Champions League and we might choke. Any merit in that at all, or not for you?
I've seen a warrior mindset from so many of these players. I love that clip there was when Gibbs White's in a huddle, Fletcher's on his head in his hands. There's a clip when we played Man United at home. I can't remember if it was last season or the season before. And Morg says, look in their eyes, they don't want this. And there is a certain fear that fading football teams have about getting embarrassed at a less fashionable club. Going to Old Trafford, winning 3-2, that win. Going to Anfield, winning 1-0, beating Man City there. Forest are just running through teams now, showing scant respect for history, even for what's there now. I've seen Ryan Yates kick lumps out of some of the most established players in the Premier League. We don't care. We're shrewd. We're hardened. We look battle ready. And we are a relatively young side, but we're playing without fear and we're getting results. This isn't Nuno coming out every week saying, oh, we're building, there's a 5-year plan, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, bemoaning recruitment in the windows. We've just gone for a January where our only target was to strap everybody down and make sure nobody leaves, extend contracts rather than look to rock the boat. They're on it. They're motivated. They've bought into the plan. They know their role within the plan. Even the players that are outside of the 11 don't appear to be in any way disruptive. Everybody's bought in from top to bottom. The support base is behind them. The manager's tuned in. We're seeing his personality come through. And the most important thing is in the mindset, we're not sitting back and playing for draws now. We still have this belief we can go out there and take on anybody. Play a back four, play the wingers, back the midfield. It's happening, and I won't let your negativity bring me down.
That's not my negativity. Devil's advocate case. Sorry.
No wonder you were sweating. You knew you got to ask that question to me in Thames this morning. That's where the perspiration was coming from, not your blooming blood pressure. Look, they lost at Bournemouth. A lot of teams have lost at Bournemouth. Lost at Newcastle, one of our bogey teams. Lost at Craven Cottage, one of our bogey grounds. Difficult games. There's no disgrace in losing to teams that are good. You've got to lose games from time to time. And I think one or two people were getting far too concerned about the back-to-back defeats against Fulham and Newcastle. I think internally, the win against Brighton allowed them to lose those games without damage being done. The problem would have come if it hadn't have been Brighton at home, but they did. And you look at it now, Ipswich away is the next game. Ipswich have really struggled to score goals at Portman Road. They've scored more goals away than they've scored at home. Now they're under pressure. But the difference in standard between the two teams is vast. Manchester United at home. I mean, come on. I mean, it's good. It will sound like it sounded on Saturday, and that'll be all the players need because they're not a very good team. Now, if you win that game, you then go to Villa on the back of beating Man U at home. So your confidence is through the roof going into that game. And if you've won those two, you're perhaps looking and thinking, a draw's enough here. Don't need to win. Let's just stay in, put the pressure on them. We might nick one on the counter because they've got to beat us based on where they are. Plays into Forest's hands. Everton at home is a tricky fixture. They're on their best unbeaten run since 2017 under David Moyes. That's a difficult game. Then it's Tottenham. Now, Tottenham could be out of Europe by then. So what are they playing for, Spurs, at this point? They're on the holidays. And you'll be discombobulated in there. The entire thing's going to be coming apart at the seams. Brentford at home, you're not too worried about that. Crystal Palace away, difficult fixture. Leicester at home, how many? Now we've got two left. West Ham, Chelsea. There's a real chance by the time they get to West Ham, could be done and dusted. Because you can make a real case that they might not lose any of those matches. The most difficult game to me on paper there might well be Crystal Palace away. If Mateta's back and scoring again, because they're difficult at home. But the rest of them, you look at it and say, look, Tottenham are going to give you chances. I just look at. I know what you're saying, but I think the issue for what the people that are nervous is because they still can't quite convince themselves that this is actually going to happen, and that's completely understandable, isn't it? Because it's so beyond the realms of possibility. There was a stat, I saw at the weekend. Forest finished 59 points behind Manchester City last season. 59 points. And we're 4 points in front of them now. If I would have said to you, there'll be a 63-point swing between Forest and Man City, you would have had me taken away in a straitjacket, wouldn't you? Taken away in a straitjacket. 63-point swing to this point from last season with Manchester City. Look, relax, Matt. Relax.
Devil's advocate case. Like I said, I believe we're going to do it. I have done for ages. I said this loads. I thought if we were in the top 5 before we played Ipswich, we'd do it, and we're 3rd. So, I mean, looking at a 4th place, I think. In fact, we'll just come to this in one sec. As AD says, this is a bit cheap, but if you think we'll make the Champions League, hit like. That's a proper YouTube thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Over 600 people with us, which is fantastic. So
we should get 600 likes then, because everybody should be thinking regarding the Champions League. Don't you worry about that. 600 likes coming your way, Matt.
Just before we move on, just quickly out of curiosity, I'll ask you this. Who are the other teams making the Champions League then, if we're in? Fletch first.
Liverpool, Forest, Manchester City, Arsenal, and
it's Chelsea for me. Chelsea are the one that's sneaking there. I just think they've got it in them to beat anyone. They weren't classic yesterday, but they find a way, and I do rate their set of players.
I'm not confident. What I do know is that Bournemouth have a run-in that is really straightforward. But I can't convince myself that they can keep winning. If I'm a Bournemouth fan, I'm feeling like the Forest fans felt in about October. Can this carry on? I think they're thinking that now, and I don't know the answer to it. But I think Bournemouth's running is great. Brighton are the team of the momentum. I can't rely on Chelsea at all. Can't rely on them at all. Can't defend. Goalkeeper's a nightmare. So I don't think Chelsea get in. I don't think. I think it's between Brighton and Bournemouth for the last one. Forest, City, Arsenal, Liverpool, and either Brighton or Bournemouth.
I think it's Bournemouth because of what you're saying, fixtures, and they're getting players back. Like Evan Nielsen's a good player. Came back yesterday. They're a bit like us. They've got these players that have bubbled up and now they've emerged, like Kirkes, really good player. Tyler Adams has made a difference. So yeah, it's Bournemouth in 5th for me at the moment.
The only worry I've got with Bournemouth is getting the players back. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because that means he's got to change the team that's been winning. So he got these injuries and they were winning. Now he's getting players back and putting them back in. Is that going to disrupt the run that they were on? I don't know. I mean, you might think I'm crackers for suggesting getting players back would be a bad thing. Of course, it's not. But it might disrupt the effectiveness of the starting 11, where he got to pick that 11. They all went out there and did the job for him. And now he might be starting to filter 1 or 2 back in. That could upset a few in there. That might be the issue. But I mean, they've got really winnable games. Really, really winnable game.
I'm totally unconvinced by Chelsea, I must admit, when more I see of them. I mean, they've had 2 absolute bankers in the last game, Southampton and Leicester at home. That's steadied the ship a bit for them. But yeah. Right, just before we move on to final thoughts, a word of thanks for Global Telemetrics. This is a video, if you're listening, not watching, it's a cautionary tale. It's not very uplifting. If you don't get your vehicle secured and you don't report it's nicked, it could end up like this Mercedes in a chop shop in absolute mess, in bits, literally, taken apart. So do get your do get your vehicle secured with Global Telemetrics. Cars, vans, caravans, anything you like, they are the people for you. Check out the link in the description, or just go to Forest Focus at globaltelemetrics.com, drop an email there, and they will sort you out. Right. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to add? Temps. Actually, we should just talk about, before we do that, Matt Sells is top of the Golden Glove thing. 12 clean sheets is unbelievable. Another great turnaround. And we've really gone back. Have we really gone back to basics, Temps, or not? We haven't conceded since that Newcastle disaster. Or is it more a case of lots of other things coming together and it's oversimplifying it, so we've gone back to basics?
It's the quality of the people in front of him. I think we concede far less big chances, which means we keep teams out of our box and we defend with our lives when we need to. Milenkovic is proudly an old-fashioned defender. There's more bells and whistles on Murillo, but he can tackle. He puts pressure on you. You feel his power. The added bit is the distribution and the movement on the ball. But if Murillo was a pure defender, we'd be celebrating his attributes. To Fletcher's point, Nico Williams has come good. Just dismiss Moreno out of sight. He's so far out of the team now. And Olareina, for me, is the fullback of the season in the Premier League. So Matt Sells needs to share that award with those 4 boys in front of him. But is he too clear of Raya? I think he's home and hose for the Golden Glove, and it's completely deserved. Even in games where he's been called on very occasionally, he's just proved to have a really assured pair of hands. And I'm delighted he's getting the plaudits, because that's been a really tricky position to fill for a long, long time.
Anything you want to add, Fletch? Any final thoughts before we go?
Yeah, just on that back 4, is it 43 million to put it together? 5 for the keeper, nothing for Aina, 13 Milenkovic, 10 Murillo, 15 Nico Williams. 43 million for probably the most effective defensive team in the Premier League. It's not bad, is it? You know, when everybody was criticising the way Forest recruited and laughing, they're not laughing now, are they? I hope people are eating humble. I hope they're big enough to turn around and say we got that wrong. You know, the naysayers and the so-called experts who were criticising the way that the owner was doing his business, because it's paid off.
What a journey for Nico as well, Fletch. Signed as a Jed Spence lookalike in a completely different system. He's had to relearn his trade and now looks equally comfortable left back, right back, the pace, the attacking intent. I think he's been a revelation at times this season.
One point I would make, Matt, you just described the Newcastle as a disaster. Well, it wasn't a disaster, was it? I mean, if you
11 minutes. The 11-minute disaster, I mean.
Listen, you're going to lose games. It's the Premier League. It's the Premier League. So look at it now, right? So they lost. They played 4 Premier League matches, right? Lost 5-0 at Bournemouth. Won 7-0 against Brighton. Lost 2-1 at Fulham. Lost 4-3 at Newcastle. 3 points out of 12. I looked at the league table this morning and they're still 5 points in. Nothing's changed because, as we said earlier in the pod, everybody's playing each other around them. There's that many teams in it that even when you have a little bit of it's not even a blip, because I think if you look at the fixtures, if you look at the fixtures collectively, they've taken more points from these games than they did last season anyway, when you do the head-to-heads. But they took 3 out of 12. And here we are now after a win at home against Man City and a draw against Arsenal. 5 points in, 10 games left, no damage done, everybody confident. There will be setbacks the rest of the way. But I think the point I'm trying to make is everybody else will have setbacks too. You know, there's not going to be a team that's going to go and win all 10, 30 points, we're in. I think if you win 6 or 7 at this stage, you're doing remarkably well, because it's such a difficult team, a difficult league to win in. So I think it's very much in Forest's hands. I think 5 wins, you'd be able to taste it, wouldn't you? 5 wins. What would that give us? 5 wins? 66?
Yeah.
And that was 66. Top 5.
Yeah. I know it's not the same reversing the fixtures, but if you reverse them to the first half of the season, I think we only dropped 2 points in these games or something like that. I don't think we'll match that, but yeah.
Easy, Tag. You've gone too far the other way now, Matt.
Matt, the number is this, right? This was a key number, I thought. Going into the weekend, they'd played 11 teams in the bottom half who started the day in the bottom half, and they'd won 8 of the fixtures. Prior to the weekend, they'd only won twice against teams in the top half. So they went against the head on Saturday and got a win against Manchester City. But what's been Forest's strength all season is beating teams they should beat, beating the teams below them. And they've got a lot of teams now below them and significantly below them to come. So you can claim this devil's advocate bit. I think it's a bit of a confidence wobble from your perspective today. I think you're having a bit of a wobble. You're doing it amongst friends, though. We can help you through this.
We've talked him back up again, Fletch. We've got him back to where he needs to be.
I'll confess, the only time I wobbled was Fulham away, where I thought we were really bad. But other than that, that was totally confident since, I don't know, maybe even West Ham at home. That was like 10 games in. I thought we're the real deal once I saw us take them apart. So, yeah.
Does anybody think there's a chance that Arsenal slip out based on the fact they can't score? They've taken 1 point from 3 games.
I think there's a chance we finish above Arsenal.
Yeah.
I don't see.
Paul
I
Merson
watched that game.
Paul Merson thinks they can drop out. He's tapping it. Merce.
No, they won't slip out. They'll grind out enough 1-0s, I think. But no.
I'll let you tell me who's going to get the one in these games.
Declan Rice. Every game.
You know what, though? Right now, if I said to you, which dressing room would you sooner be in? Rest of the way. Man City, Arsenal, or Forest?
Yeah, I mean, Arsenal and Man City both think they're failing, don't they? Because they're not chasing top spot. It's the Forest dressing room. Liverpool and Forest should be the only satisfied dressing rooms in the Premier League.
And Brighton, yeah. Yeah. But
Brighton, they're outside. That's the issue. They're still outside. They know the pressure's on them because they're thinking, we've won 4 in a row in the league and 6 in a row in all competitions, but we're still not in a Champions League place. So they know they've got to keep going, which again, as we say, puts a lot of pressure. You don't want to be the chaser at this stage because you're under that much pressure. Every time you lose, you think, oh, look at the gap now. Now we've got to win 2 more and they've got to lose 2 more and can grind you down.
Brighton's next 3 games, by the way, Man City away, Villa at home. So whatever happens in that helps us as long as we're picking up points. And then Palace away, which, as Fletch said, I think is our most difficult game to go. So, yeah.
We'll stick a line through Brighton. Sorry, Brighton, we've finished you off. That's it. Brighton.
Picked you up and ripped you down. Temps, anything before we go?
I just mentioned it before Fletch does. So I got in a bit of a daft bet with him last year when Luton had a brief flirt with surviving relegation, and I said they'd maintain point a game and put dinner on it, and I lost. So I was in the can for that. And it's got one of those glorious random phone calls from Fletch. You fancy coming out for a curry with me in Rio? And I did. It was top class, great fella, telling brilliant stories. But I think on the old round system, I'm now in to take Fletch out twice. So no more bets between me and Fletch because you just find yourself in some funny rooms with some great people, and very, very conscious that I'm in his pocket.
I've actually enjoyed not being taken out, so I've got this hanging over you for the entire season. I've taken much more satisfaction out of this. By the way, John Percy from the Telegraph had just messaged me to say Milenkovic was 10.1. So if that's the case, it's only 40 million for the back four, which is even better. So thanks for that, John. But 10.1 for Milenkovic. So 10 for him, 10 for Murillo, 15 for Nico. So what's that? 35. 5 for the goalie and nothing for Ola. Wow.
And 3 for Hudson-Odoi. I think we said 5 earlier.
Yeah, 3. Yeah. And on the any other business thing, just to do the other thing, now we've got the issue that we always hoped we'd have, but now we've got to deal with it. Players whose contracts are expiring, players who have significantly increased their worth and value since arriving here. So Ola Aina's up in the summer. A lot of clubs would want him, got to keep him. Hudson-Odoi, as you say, will be going into his final year. Such an important player. You're going to start to get offers for Murillo, for Gibbs-White, for all these people. And I think, the next step now is how are ownership going to deal with it? You can't keep everybody. That has to be acknowledged. So how do you deal with that process? It's like I say, it's the process that we all wanted. And now it's the process that we don't want to face, because the reality is that this is going to be a sought after group of players. People are going to look at it and go, not only are they good players, but look at the attitude of them, look at the work ethic of them. They can make this club better. So they'll have a plan in place, I'm sure. And I know how ambitious Mr. Marinakis is. And I wouldn't want to knock on his door and say, can I leave? I'd probably let my agent go in first. I think I'd be going in first. But this is going to be the reality of it in the summer. I think this summer will be fine, because if they're in the Champions League, then people aren't going to want to leave. But I think after that, that's going to be the big test. And I'll be amazed if this summer they don't get offers for Gibbs-White and Murillo, at least from some big hitters, both here and in Europe as well. So it's going to be a test for them. Who can they keep? How does it work out? The fact it feels so good in there, and the fans play a big part in this. The fact that the fans have made the club feel like it feels is a big pull for the players. The fact they all get on with Nuno so well is massive for the players. The fact the owner is so intertwined with them all, has a personal relationship with them, and supports them so much is big. So everything's trending in the right direction, but you're still going to have to fend off offers for some of the players and get other players under contract at wages that you probably didn't anticipate you'd have to pay them when they first arrived. It's a big step from Champions League wages or Premier League wages to Champions League wages. It's a big old step, that.
I can see people in the chat worrying about Olaina. I know it's been reported we've got an option to extend him by 1 more year, so hopefully that's the case. And he's not actually available to go.
Matt, you do that as a necessity and a certainty, wouldn't you? But I think the way he's played, and Temps will tell you this in his role at Notts, that you get into a situation where people just deserve that contract, and he's one of those players now that deserves to be paid like one of or the best right back in the Premier League, because that's what he's turned himself into. And the fact that he's 28, I think some people think he's a little bit younger, but he's 28. This is probably his last big one. So he's got to make sure he gets this right. And I don't think that the club will have any issue with a player who's earned every penny as he has. So I think there'll be a real push to make him happy, get him signed up, get the best years of his career in a Forest shirt. And I think that has to be a big priority for them, doesn't it, over the course of the summer? You'd like not to get to the automatic renewal. You'd like to get the new contract done prior to that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that option's there, but he doesn't deserve roll on the same wedge. He deserves 3 to 4 years on proper money, and I think that there'll be a mutual will to get that done.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. By the way, your bet next year can be on if Luton are going to get promoted from League One. I think the way it's going for them.
Well, ever since Temps backed them, they've hardly won a game. Rob Edwards has lost his job. The new fella's gone, and this is all on Temps. This has got nothing to do with anything. This is on Temps.
Oh dear, what a decline, certainly. Right, just to say, we'll be back tomorrow evening. We'll do a fan phone in, and then Wednesday we're with Matt Ford, who's the perfect guest for this time because he'll be incredibly upbeat after everything. He'll be loving it. So yeah, Matt Ford on Wednesday, match preview Thursday. Ipswich fan Joe's just texted me back, so we'll hear from him on Friday, and then we'll talk Ipswich on Saturday. Great to have 670 people with us. Really good to have you on board. Do hit like before you go. That would be a big help. Michael Temple, thank you very much.
Good to see you, fellas.
Great to see you. Darren Fletcher, great to have you with us. Thank you very much.
Thanks for asking.
Well, you came to me, let's not lie, because I thought you wouldn't be able to do it. So I think this is your only window.
You asked me that much, and I say, no, mate, sorry, I can't. No, mate, sorry, I can't. No, mate. But when I've got a window, I'll always come and try and do it for you.
Well, yeah, I'm going to say, what have you been doing? You've done the Super Bowl, you've done Saudi boxing, you've done Champions League, yeah. You're, like what I said, the busiest man in sport, I should say. Yeah. So yeah,
I've got this little Darren Fletcher vision in my head now, Matt, that you planted earlier. Little Darren Fletcher.
He was at Temps. He was an absolute toe rag, I'll tell you. Absolute toe rag.
Don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Right. Have a good day, everyone. And if we don't see you tomorrow, we shall see you soon.